So I'm finally getting around to making the Stormblood video, and I'll say, as you can tell by the title, I think Stormblood was the best story in Final Fantasy, the entire series so far up to that point. And especially after the Heavensward video, I swore that this was peak Final Fantasy. I know everybody had told me, you know, it only gets better and stuff like that, or wait till you play Shadowbringers and all this stuff. And I mean, yeah, I completely understand that, but at the time, especially because some people always kept telling me that Stormblood was kind of a step back from what Heavensward tried to achieve. And in a lot of ways, I can completely get that. But I feel like the steps that Stormblood took to differentiate itself from Heavensward is why, in my eyes, it's better than Heavensward. Now, Heavensward's story was amazing, as you can tell by that video. Anybody who's watched that video, you guys know exactly how I feel about Heavensward. And there's even so much more I could talk about with that. But for this video and specifically, I think this video, as I'm probably going to say with the Shadowbringers video, as unlike the last time when I made that Heavensward video, I actually hadn't started Stormblood yet. But for this one, when I'm making this video, I actually am already almost done with the main story of Shadowbringers. So I had time to sit on it. So there's a lot of stuff I want to actually talk about with this. I made a bunch of points and everything like that too, but I feel like what really differentiates itself from the rest of Final Fantasy, but I can't say that Stormblood tried to do something that Final Fantasy has never done, but in a way, it did it in a way Final Fantasy has never attempted. Final Fantasy has always brought up these themes of slavery and, you know, despair and things like that, you know, these really political topics. But in the end, they ended up pushing that boundary even further. They did not shy from topics for Stormblood. They did not shy away from anything. But let me not get ahead of myself. I guess let's try to go in a basic order that I tried to really do here, because in a way, I feel like this was a way bigger expansion than Heavensward was in terms of what happened with our general friends and, you know, the world itself. So basically, one of the first things, you know, we end up finding out earlier on was, you know, Ida this whole time was actually Lise. You know, the person we had been calling Ida this whole time was actually, you know, the name of her sister who had died. And, you know, of course, and her father as well. And it was the younger sister, Lise, we had been talking to the whole time, but she's been masquerading as Ida in a sort of coping mechanism, I guess. You know, like there's a bunch of different reasons, but the biggest thing I took from it was, you know, she became Ida because she felt like this is what everyone needed, you know, so Lise wasn't good enough, you know, and Ida is what we really needed here. So that's what I really took from it, essentially. And I guess I could talk about that now here. Another character we really got to know in this expansion alongside Lise was Alisaie, and Alisaie being, you know, the twin sister of Alphino. And honestly, for a Realm Reborn in Heavensward, you basically are never, like, he's practically glued to you that entire time. You know, and the fact that, you know, we kind of take our space from Alphino and spend a ton of time with Alisaie and Lise, you know, it really got me closer to these characters. Because if I'm honest, I cared about Ida, but if I'm honest, she wasn't a character that was always around, you know, with me during a Realm Reborn or Heavensward. You know, she practically wasn't there at all during Heavensward. So, you know, I cared about her. And so I cared enough about her to where when we found out the truth about her, it still hit, I'll say that. But I really enjoyed being able to get to know Alisaie alongside that too, because a lot of games try to do the whole twins thing, that they're so similar and stuff. I'd go as far to say the only thing similar about Alphino and Alisaie is that they look exactly alike. They look similar physically. But even then, when you get to know them so much, it's as if their face changes. So, like, I feel like I know Alisaie so well. I can instantly, even if they're wearing the exact same clothes, you know, I could still differentiate them, you know, and that's not something I could do before I played Stormblood. And I find that really, really ingenious. They definitely did that on purpose. Now they obviously wear different clothes and everything like that. They're not, doing the twin matching thing anymore. But I really, really got to, know and love Alize and Lise. They really are really strong characters who care so much for the people around them, and they're willing to go so far, to go and make sure the people they care about are happy. Lise cares so much about, her home, that she really wants Ala Mhigo to go back to the way it was. She wants to continue the fight that her father had started, and that means so much to her. And same thing with Alize. Alize cares so much about the people around her. She's a way more emotional person than Alphino is. Alphino is obviously, when he was younger and stuff during Aram Reborn and Heaven's Ward, he was obviously more emotional, but he was always more composed than she was. He was very soft spoken and he was quick to action with a lot of things. Alize is quick to action too, but she is very witty and very snappy, So she's way easier to read than Alphino is. She's very, very much more outspoken than he is. And I really love that about her character too. It really sets her apart. Like, her brother and her are very, very different people. I guess jumping around again though, another character that was a really big highlight for me when I was playing Stormblood was actually Fordola. Now, I didn't really expect to like Fordola that much. And honestly, Fordola isn't that likable of a person, but I can really resonate with her, in a way. Like, at the end of the day, she was treated really, really bad, by her fellow people. She was really treated bad by her fellow people. And, purely because of her family, trying to have a better life for themselves. I'm not going to go into whether that was the right choice or the wrong choice. It's the choice that they made. And because they were treated as traitors to their own people, because they're kissing up to the people who, who took away their home and their freedom, that kind of branded them as people that, their own kind don't like. And, in the end, her father was killed by them, like that. And that's what made her, obviously she hated the Empire still, but she also hated her own people for treating them like that. So that pushed her to actually joining the Empire, that way she basically wanted to change things from the inside. She wanted to become something they couldn't ignore, even if it meant, doing deals with the devil kind of thing. That's how far she was willing to go, for her people, even though she hated them so much. She was willing to kill plenty of them. Again, not going into if that was the right thing or wrong thing to do. I never think killing somebody is the right thing to do. But in the end, that is what Fordola chose to do. And she even ended up becoming subject to the experimentation going on by Garlemald, because the people of the Garlean from Garlemald, they actually can't use magic, unlike pretty much everybody else in the world. So they basically felt like they were at a natural disadvantage from everybody else. So that is what really pushed them to end up basically trying to create Magitech and stuff like that. And that's why, Magitech is a big thing they use and stuff like that. But basically now they were able to do human experimentation and basically give people the echo that, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn are known to have. And that's how what ends up giving Fordola this crazy, more power and able to see, the past and future and stuff like that. And that ends up going wild for her later on, because after they win and everything like that and they free Ala Mhigo, Fordola is still going through that. Even when she's in her jail cell, she's constantly seeing, through the echo, the past and stuff of people that are nearby her and stuff like that. Even the guards, at the door, guarding her cell, she can see their past and, how she had a hand in destroying a lot of these people's lives. She even got a nickname as the Butcher, and the fact that, the people of Ala Mhigo, now that it's free, saw that she was kept prisoner and not killed, enraged them. They're like, bro, she slaughtered our families and y'all are gonna let her live? This is ridiculous. And I can completely understand that, being known as the Butcher means she had to have been doing something right, for Garlemald. So that's pretty horrible. So it makes sense that they wanted her to face justice, but at the end of the day, they felt like killing her wouldn't really accomplish anything. It would just, spread the seed of hate, It wouldn't be the conclusion she really wanted. She wanted Fordola to see the Ala Mhigo, you know, that they create. You know, she wants her to see the results of not going down the path that Fordola did, you know. And I feel like that's a worse crime in the end, especially with her suffering because of the echo. You know, that kind of makes it worse in a way. But this is only what I love about Stormblood. This is only really one chapter of, you know, Stormblood. Stormblood was kind of broken up into two halves. We had everything going on with Ala Mhigo, especially, you know, with everything that was going on there. You know, even the general end up going back to Ala Mhigo instead of serving Nanamo anymore. That was really crazy to me. I definitely didn't expect him to leave her side. Mainly just because, of course, it showed that he had pledged his life and sword to her and stuff like that. And I honestly feel like when he did that, I don't think he really truly expected Ala Mhigo to ever be free, because I feel like even though he was indebted to her, I feel like, what if you got free though, man? Like, if you got free, then would you have still stayed at her side this whole time? I feel like it was a question he never asked himself, not until it was too late. And that's why even after Ala Mhigo was free, he still, you know, was scared. He was scared to actually, you know, say he wanted to go back. That hurt Nanamo, because as long as they've been together, you know, he wasn't honest with her in the end with that. And in the end, he got to end up going back, and I love that for him. You know, and now he's the general, you know, of the military for Ala Mhigo. And I thought that was a great conclusion to that arc for his story. Especially when you think back to Ilbert, you know, who was willing to do anything to get Ala Mhigo free. And now look too, you know, if only he was still alive so he can see the Ala Mhigo he could have worked towards instead. You know, the Ala Mhigo that, like, say if Ilbert's plan did end up working and they freed Ala Mhigo like that, would you want to live in an Ala Mhigo like that? You know, I don't know. I just think it was a very, you know, it was a very cool thing to think about. But like I said, this is only one part of Stormblood. The other part is everything to do with Doma. You know, we kind of call back to A Realm Reborn, dealing with Yugiri, and her country being basically under the control of the Empire for like the last 25 years or so. So it's like, this is ridiculous too. And we actually get to go over there and spend the other part of the expansion, you know, over there. I mean, it's not, you know, that linear. You'll be going back and forth, spending time here, then going to Ala Mhigo, spending time there. It happens back and forth. But the fact that we're hopping across these countries, it really felt like, unlike Heavensward, we were only ever working towards this one, you know, nation to join us. It felt like we were getting multiple nations to join us. You know, Ala Mhigo may be small, but having them as part of the alliance would be a wonderful thing, especially when we reclaim it. You know, while Doma is not in Eorzea really, it's very, very far away. You know, it's in the east. So having them, you know, really become our ally started really feeling like the world was uniting against the Empire, you know, because the Empire isn't just a problem for us. There was also a problem from them on the other side of the world. So I thought that was really, really well done. I really loved that. I think another part I really enjoyed too was actually finding Hien. And he was over there at the Steppe for a long time because he was basically gravely injured, and they actually nursed him back to health. And I loved actually participating in the whole Nadam thing and everything too. It felt like we were throwing back to Dragon Ball, you know, with our little tournament arcs and stuff like that. I thought it was really fun. I lost to the duty like 3 times, but, you know, especially to the end, because I feel like they were having you do so much stuff. Like, I'm fighting these guys off of me, you know, this team is over here trying to claim the circle, you know, and then we try to stop them, but I'm getting attacked while I'm trying to stop them. I'm trying to claim it, and then he attacks me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, come on. It was so much going on at one time, but it really felt like a battle royale, you know. It was like a team-based battle royale. I guess you could think of it more like the Tournament of Power, you know, from Dragon Ball Super, I guess. It was very much like that. You had your team, you know, but it was still a battle royale all the same. And that's exactly what it felt like. But I really enjoyed that, you know. Winning the Nadam was something that was definitely a highlight of Stormblood for me. I really enjoyed that. It felt like a nice step away from the doom and gloom we had just been going through. I think, everything ends up, spiraling though, as we work to try and free Doma after getting Hien back and stuff like that, and being able to have the people of the steppe fight by our side, against the Empire to reclaim Doma. I thought that was cool. It was sad in the end with Gosetsu. Gosetsu ends up getting shot while trying to save them, and he gets shot like multiple times. Too, by Yotsuyu, who is basically the commander of Doma, appointed by the Empire. But in the end, Gosetsu and Yotsuyu actually both survive. But in the end, Yotsuyu actually lost her memory of everything. And in a way, she was kind of like a baby again, a small child. And that's what her mind, really seemed like. She just really wanted to eat dango and stuff like that. And she really did care for Gosetsu. But in the end, the Empire kind of tried to make some fake attempt to really try to work with Doma after it's liberated. And Asahi is the, emissary for this event. And it turns out Asahi is actually Yotsuyu's brother. And in the end, it was just like, oh crap. He really actually, this guy is lying. And at first it didn't make sense, because I was like, he was putting up this whole facade of being, cool and, and really, hating what some of the things the Empire does. But, if you really want the enemy to change, you have to change it from the inside. Kind of in a similar way that Fordola was kind of thinking about. And he doesn't agree with a lot of the things the Empire does, but if he wants the Empire to change for the better, he has to be within the Empire. And that made sense. But in the end, he really hates the Warrior of Light because of what he did to Xenos, who, Xenos, who was, the main villain of Stormblood, because by that point we had actually killed Xenos, or we led him to his death. And we, because, he ends up committing suicide. And then we had pushed him to that point after he fused with a primal, become like Shinryu. And that was an awesome fight though. Shout out to everybody I fought with during that, because that was awesome. But man, that ended up being such a weird turn for Asahi, because why did he choose to, break the facade there? It kind of just felt like, we outnumber you, because what if the Warrior of Light decided to just fight him then and there? Well, obviously that'd be really dumb for Doma, because they're not fully in a position to fight right now. But still, he didn't really make an effort to hide it, especially since he came back. Whether he act like the Warrior of Light wouldn't tell them, at that point it felt like it was less pretending to be genuine and more, let's pretend we're not hiding things from each other. Both sides are obviously hiding stuff from each other, and both sides know it, but they're just gonna act like they're not until the situation demands for it. But in the end, he ends up causing Yotsuyu to get her memory back, and she ends up killing her parents, and she actually ends up fusing with a primal, which was really cool. We actually lost it out a couple times as well, but I really did enjoy that fight, that whole arc with her. In the end, like, some of her final words was wondering if Gosetsu enjoyed, the fruit that he got her as much as he remembered it being, because he had this fruit a long time ago and he hadn't had it in years, and she had just got it for him before she got her memory back. And it's funny because she didn't just get her memory back then. It'd been slowly coming back without her saying anything. While she would tend to Gosetsu, who's kind of out of commission after what happened in Doma Castle, she would remember slight things, like she'd see the bullet wounds on his back, and she'd remember like her hurting him like that. She remembered she was the one who did that. And the thing is, even if she had like the mind of a child, she wasn't stupid. She was not stupid, because at the end of the day, she knows that obviously people did not like her. Everywhere she went, people were surprised she was alive. People were constantly coming after her. She was getting ridiculed by the people who did recognize her. Obviously she had done something, even if she couldn't remember. And she realized this later on. But I think that's what really led to the impact of her remembering, especially seeing her parents that basically treated her like an object, realizing, oh, she's pretty, she got a nice body, so we can just sell her and stuff like that. Like I said at the beginning of this video, they did not shy away from topics in it. Like literally, like sending her to a pleasure house and stuff like that. That's horrible, and it was her own parents. It's horrible, man. It's horrible. Even I can't even remember the NPC's name, but there was somebody that was part of, with the Domans, and he was supposed to be guarding Yotsuyu, but he remembers he was like in charge of her while she was at that pleasure house, and he literally couldn't even look at her because like he feels responsible that part of the reason she became as evil as she was because he pushed her to that point. And I think that's why Yotsuyu was one of the better written characters of this story. Normally, I kind of get tired of the whole villain having a sob story thing, but I felt like it was done so well here because everything she went through was so incredibly horrible. Literally, that whole pleasure house thing, being mistreated by her parents, everybody around her, just ridiculing her, not thinking good of her at all. Asahi just letting all this crap happen to her when she was younger, because when you're brother and sister, you're supposed to stick up for each other, especially if your parents are mistreating you. And the parents are, were obviously treating Asahi right, but he should have stood up for, her brother, she should have, he should have stuck up for her. And that really sucks. So she literally had the entire world against her. So that's why she hated Doman. She was like, why would I care about these people when they let this happen to me? That's all they really cared about, So it's just like, I don't know. It was so well done. Yotsuyu was a incredibly well written character, especially in the end, how she died, dude. Like even it wasn't just that like the memories of her, with Gosetsu didn't go away when she got her memories back. She deeply cared for Gosetsu even after she got her memory back, even when she realized she couldn't, because before she killed her parents, she actually was going to take her own life because she couldn't bear, to be around Gosetsu after everything he's done for her and after everything she's done to him, shooting him and all that kinds of crazy stuff, and he, even after all of that, he saved her life, took care of her, while she didn't have her memory, and ensured that she was going to be okay. And she couldn't bear that. And she was literally going to kill herself. And I was like, dude, what is happening, man? I've never seen Final Fantasy get this real. And I feel like what makes Stormblood so good was while everything about Stormblood is fantasy, everything about Final Fantasy is fantasy, they added a sense of realism in Final Fantasy through Stormblood specifically that I have never seen done in the series before. I'm not gonna act like I've played every single game, but I've never heard or seen anything of any Final Fantasy attempting to do these kinds of things. And in a way, it kind of made me realize why some people don't care for Stormblood. I feel like Stormblood was too much for some people. Some people use video games as an escape from the reality they have to go through in their day to day. And I completely understand that. While I don't necessarily use video games as an escape, I kind of use it as, I guess it would depend on how you define escape. Sometimes I don't want to be thinking about bills or school or anything like that, so I play 14. But I just am somebody who loves getting immersed into a story. I love seeing creative writing and, interesting, ways of storytelling. And that's why I play a lot of video games. But I felt like 14 showed me a sense of realism I haven't really seen in any other video game, especially ones that aren't based on real events or anything. But it showed me a sense of realism I've never expected to see from Final Fantasy. They did not hold back in this, sensitive subject area. They let you vividly know what happened to some of these characters, what was going to happen to them, all these kinds of things. It was terrible, but I absolutely loved every minute of it. They were, I know that sounds kind of, messed up, but even though I was seeing all these terrible things that happened to Yotsuyu and Gosetsu and what happened to his family, what happened with, people of Doma, all that stuff was horrible, but I was immersed into all of it because in a lot of ways it it it's reminiscent of what happens in real life. You know, there are people who had to go through a lot of these kinds of things. These are real kind of world issues just put in a fantasy setting, you know. And I know that's not a, it's not a rare thing to do. People put these kind of political things in, you know, stories all the time, but the way it was executed here, especially over the length of time of the entire expansion, you know, when our part as the Warrior of Light, you know, being part of this, you know, all this kind of added to something that I've never seen a video game attempt to do. It was never I've never seen a video game execute real world, you know, problems. I've never seen real world problems executed in a video game in this way. Never. And I'm not saying I necessarily doubt I will again, but I don't know if anything could top Stormblood in terms of that aspect of things. You know, even after getting this far into Shadowbringers, you know, I still gotta say that Shadowbringers hasn't done but I'm not saying that Stormblood is better. I'm just saying that what Shadowbringers is going for isn't what Stormblood was going for. So they're going for totally different things. So at least in terms of Final Fantasy XIV, I think Stormblood is the rawest Final Fantasy gets, you know, and I love that about it, you know, and I honestly get why that's not for everybody. That's genuinely not for everyone. And I totally get why some people don't care for Stormblood as much, because that's too much for some people to handle. Some people can't really play, you know, a game when it's dealing with issues that are that raw and uncensored. So I totally get that. And that's totally okay. I just know that doesn't take away from the quality of writing here. It just is not for everyone. And I totally respect that, and I totally get that. But that's not everything, you know, because later on we end up finding out that the Garlemald was actually founded by an Osean, you know, and that blew my mind. Honestly, I didn't see that coming at all. But it kind of makes sense why you know, the government of Garlemald is so evil, you know, and why they desire expansion, you know, and stuff. So that's pretty crazy. But I guess to go back, I guess this technically happened earlier on, but Alphino actually said he was going to go to Garlemald with the envoy that was with Asahi, because they wanted to go and basically see if Xenos, who had died by the Warrior of Light, or by himself, they basically wanted to see if he was possessed by an Osean, because Xenos is alive. He is alive. He's the one who sent Asahi here to Doma. So how could he do that if he was supposed to already be dead? So that is why they need to see. There's no way that Xenos was, you know, alive. They buried him. You know, they watched him die, and that ended up being the case. So but in the end, he actually fails to end up getting there, and he's actually, you know, attacked by Garlemald themselves, even though they're attacking their own vessel. But he's actually end up saved by, I guess, what's called by a man named Shadowhunter, with his little group of other Shadowhunters or whatever. I wouldn't really give their name, but we end up finding out that Shadowhunter is actually Gaius, you know, the main antagonist from A Realm Reborn. And that blew my mind. That blew my mind, because we hadn't actually seen his face before, and that was crazy. That was really crazy. But after the whole thing with the Alliance trying to make peace with the Empire fails, you know, a lot of the Scions actually end up going into comas. They all start getting these messages and hearing this voice through the echo, and they all one by one start falling into comas, you know, little by little at a time, you know, and they have to end up being there for the battle against the Empire, because that's how basically that meeting with the Empire ended up, that they gotta end up fighting, they gotta end up scrapping. We obviously can't reach, you know, a good conclusive point, so we gotta scrap. And in the end, Alize and the Warrior of Light are the only ones who really, you know, fight in it. But during that fight, you know, Alize actually ends up going down, and she goes into the coma too. And I guess technically the Warrior of Light ends up losing the fight, but he's saved by Estinian. And when he comes to, he actually ends up, you know, being told everything and all that stuff, and he gets back and realizing he's the only other Scion left. But during that coma, he was actually talked to by a mysterious figure that basically said, if we need, like, You need to save your world. I need to save my world. We have to work together in order to make that happen. Heidelin could get corrupted. All that stuff is going to happen. We got to do this. And he's placed a beacon near the Crystal Tower, I believe it was. And we need that would be the beacon that would take him to his world, you know, because again, they have to work together, you know, for their worlds to be saved. And that is kind of how Stormblood ends. In a way, it was a very anticlimactic ending because it felt like, especially when knowing people had to wait after that, like, what's gonna happen? You know, it makes me happy. I guess I got into 14 later because I would have been very upset having to wait for Shadowbringers, because I'm just like, dude, come on, man. I need to see what happens next, man. I need to see what happens next. Because, dude, I don't know how long it is between the patches and the next expansion. It might be only a couple months, but I know in between the release of Stormblood and Shadowbringers, it's like 2 years. So, dang, dude. But man, I love this story so much. I love this story so much, and I felt like it was a good, now that I played a lot of Shadowbringers, it was a very, very good entry or transition into what Shadowbringers was going to offer. Once I finish Shadowbringers, I will definitely get my video out on that. But man, obviously there's a ton of details I skipped over, but as these videos go, these aren't really reviews. They're mainly just me getting the highlights of this story out and my thoughts on them out for you guys to hear. You know, I know these videos lately haven't been really crazy, especially they've been pretty long, but honestly, I've kind of just loved spitting into the mic, talking about something I love so much, especially with a lot of you guys who may really enjoy this too, you know. So especially with how well that Shadowbringers reaction video I did, especially since Shadowbringers ain't new. I'm surprised that I got a lot of the attention that it did. So much love to that. So I really do want to keep making 14 videos. I've been streaming through Shadowbringers, not a whole bunch, but enough to you guys get to see a lot of my reactions to it. I'm gonna finish up this little side quest you have to do, a mandatory side quest you have to do, so I can finish this last arc. But then after that, there's only like the level 80 quest for Shadowbringers that leads into the ending. I definitely will stream through that. That's gonna be awesome. That way you guys can see my reaction to it. If you haven't, and if you do want to make sure you see that, you can make sure you guys subscribe and hit the like button. That way you'll never miss another video or stream ever again, especially if you hit the bell icon. That way you'll be notified for it. But I am going to get back to our regularly scheduled programs. I want to talk about Dragon Quest again. I want to talk about more Final Fantasy XIV, you know, especially after I finish Shadowbringers. I feel like I'll talk about, you know, I want to talk more about what I love so much about this game as a whole. But look forward to more 14 content. Look forward to more Final Fantasy. Look more, you know, for Square Enix. You know, look forward to anything that. Look at this. I like a lot of things. I like a lot of things. So I guarantee you, there's probably going to be something here that you can enjoy. So if you want to see that kind of thing, subscribing would really make sure you would be able to not miss anything, and I'd really appreciate it. But thank you guys so much for watching. My name is KingdomAce, and remember, my warriors of courage to stay strong, stay beautiful, and always look skyward. I will see you guys in Shadowbringers. Woo!